It's not just a shadow anymore. It's wearing my skin. Come on in now. Settle yourself down. Pull that blanket up close and let your body go heavy against whatever is underneath you. There's nothing you need to do tonight. Nowhere you need to be. Nothing left to solve or carry or figure out before morning. Just here, just now. Just the sound of this old voice and the dark behind your eyes. I'm going to tell you about Harlan. And I'm going to tell you slow, because that's the only way this story deserves to be told. Not fast, not loud, not the kind of telling that jolts and rattles. This is the other kind. The kind that creeps in like groundwater through limestone. Quiet and patient, and finding every small crack you didn't know you had until it's already inside before you thought to close the door. Harlan lived in a cabin about 11 miles off the main road, up past where the cell signal dies and the pavement turns to gravel, and the gravel turns to dirt, and the dirt turns into something that doesn't quite have a name. Just tire rut and pine needle and the occasional cold glint of quartz in the red clay. It was a good cabin, solid in the way that things built with patience are solid. His grandfather had built it, and his grandfather's hands had known what they were doing. The logs were old-growth chestnut, the kind you can't get anymore, the kind the blight took from the whole of Appalachia. And the gaps between them had been chinked with a mixture of clay and horsehair that held better than anything modern could manage. The roof was tin, and when the rain came at night, it played against that roof like a slow percussion, like someone drumming their fingers on a wide table in a dark room. Patient, unhurried, not demanding anything, just marking time. Harlan liked it out there. He'd tell you that plain without any apology. He liked the quiet. He liked the way the ridge sat above the cloud ceiling on damp mornings, so that the whole hollow below was just white and still, and the pines around the cabin were the only things with any definition, their dark shapes rising up out of nothing like they were the only real things in the world. He worked remotely, something with data that he'd long since stopped trying to explain, and the only real concession he'd made to modernity, besides his laptop and the small satellite dish bolted to the south face of the cabin, was a security camera system. 2 cameras. One facing the front porch, one sweeping the tree line at the edge of the cleared ground, maybe 40 yards from the cabin wall. He'd installed them after a black bear had gotten into his cold storage 2 springs prior, knocked the frame sideways, and helped itself to 6 months of smoked venison. He wasn't afraid, he'd tell you. He just liked knowing. There is a quiet comfort in a record, in the ability to look back and see exactly what happened and when. The footage fed to a small DVR unit, an older model, consumer grade, the kind that captured everything in that grainy, green-gray, time-stamped format. The picture quality was poor, ghostly almost. It rendered the world in high contrast and low resolution, the way old memory renders the places of your childhood. Shapes all there, colors all wrong. Everything a little washed out and uncertain. But it captured motion, and that was enough. Harlan didn't check the footage every day. He only checked it when something prompted him to. On a Tuesday morning in late October, something prompted him. He came out onto the porch to take his coffee the way he did every morning. Black, in a blue enamel mug, standing at the porch rail while the morning worked its way in slow and gray. The air smelled the way it always did up on that ridge. Wet stone and pine resin, and something underneath both of those. Something mineral and very old that rose up from the earth itself. The limestone shelf his property sat on was honeycombed underneath, with passages and chambers and sinkholes. And the largest of them, 30 feet across at the mouth, dropping away into lightless depth, sat just beyond the northeast tree line. On damp mornings you could smell it, a cold exhalation, steady and unceasing, like the mountain breathing slowly out through a narrow throat deep underground. He smelled it that morning. He stood with his coffee and looked out at the fog sitting low in the hollow and breathed in that cold stone breath and thought nothing particular about it. And then he looked down. There was a footprint in the mud at the base of the porch steps. Just one. A single clean impression in the soft earth where the overnight rain had pooled and settled. Not large, not dramatic. Just there, precise in a way that made his eyes settle on it and stay. The tread pattern was deep and deliberate, and the shape of it was familiar in a way that worked on him slowly. The familiarity that doesn't comfort you. The recognition that raises the small hairs at the back of your neck rather than settling them down. He set his coffee mug on the porch rail. He went back inside and retrieved his work boots, the brown leather ones he wore nearly every day. And he brought them out and crouched down and held the right one over the impression in the mud. The match was perfect. Not close, not approximately. Perfect. Down to the worn patch on the outer heel where he'd always favored his right foot. Down to the specific compression of the ball of his foot, the way years of use had shaped that particular tread into a record of his particular body. He stayed crouched there in the cold morning air for a long time, looking at it. He told himself the obvious. It was his own print, left the day before, preserved overnight in the mud. The reasonable part of him accepted it, and he went back inside and finished his coffee and opened his laptop and worked. But the print stayed in the back of his mind all day, the way a stone stays in a shoe. Too slight to stop you, too constant to ignore. That evening, when the light had gone blue-gray and the first cold stars were coming out above the ridgeline, Harlan sat down at the kitchen table and pulled up the previous night's footage. He watched in silence. The monitor threw its pale glow against his face, and outside the tin roof ticked as it cooled. For a long stretch there was nothing, just the empty porch in green-gray light, the fog drifting slow through the frame, the timestamp advancing in the upper corner. 2:12, 2:13, 2:14. At 2:19 in the morning, the second camera, the one facing the tree line, caught something. A figure, standing at the exact border where the pines met the open ground of the yard. Harlan leaned forward in his chair, and the breath he drew was slow and deliberate. The kind you take when you're afraid that moving too quickly will startle whatever you're looking at into disappearing before you've truly seen it. The figure was still, and the posture of it, that was the thing that sent the cold moving up from the base of his skull. The particular distribution of weight, the slight forward lean, the hands loose at the sides, the tilt of the head. He knew that posture the way you know your own reflection on a bad morning. That strange, slightly wrong recognition that is nevertheless completely certain. He checked the timestamp. 2:19 a.m. Then he pulled up the footage from 24 hours earlier and moved forward to 2:19 on that recording. There he was, Harlan himself, standing on his porch with his mug, looking out at the fog. He'd woken in the night and drifted out onto the porch the way he sometimes did when sleep felt far away. The figure at the tree line had been doing precisely what Harlan had been doing on his porch. Not roughly, not approximately, precisely. The same tilt of the head, the same slack of the shoulders, the same quality of stillness that belongs to a person looking outward without truly seeing. 24 hours later, to the minute. Harlan sat back in his chair, and for a long time the only sounds were the tick of the cooling roof and the low hiss of the tape. Outside, the wind moved through the pines with that deep collective sigh, like thousands of needles all breathing at once. He didn't sleep well that night, but he checked the tapes again the next morning, and the morning after that, and the pattern held without variation. Whatever stood at the tree line followed him through every ordinary movement of his day. every walk to the woodpile, every afternoon splitting logs, every time he stood at the porch rail and looked out at nothing in particular. It gave everything back to him 24 hours later, with an exactness that felt less like coincidence with each passing day and more like devotion. It wore something that looked like his coat. Its face was nothing the camera could resolve, just that featureless green-gray blur, smooth and indistinct, turned always in whatever direction Harlan had been facing the day before. He started calling it the Yesterday Man, privately, in his own mind. He didn't say the name aloud. Saying it aloud felt like it would make something concrete that he wasn't ready to have be concrete. By the second week in November, the delay had dropped to 12 hours. He noticed it first when the morning footage showed the figure performing something he'd done the previous evening, not the previous dawn. He cross-referenced the timestamps side by side in the kitchen lamplight, and the arithmetic was plain. The gap was closing. The thing at the tree line was nearer in time than it had been. It was catching up. He should have left then. He knew it the way you know something without wanting to know it. That wordless, bone-level certainty that arrives before thought, that the thinking mind then works very hard to argue you out of. There was still time. The road was still passable. He could have put his boots and his laptop in his truck and driven off down the dirt and the gravel and the pavement until the cell signal came back and the world got loud and ordinary again. But he didn't leave. And the reason was the tapes. Because by then, watching the footage had become something he couldn't set aside. He developed an intimacy with the Yesterday Man's patterns, its rhythms, and in that understanding he'd found something that felt, however falsely, like control. Like if he'd just watched enough, he'd find the logic, find the one frame that would explain everything and tell him how to make it stop. He didn't understand yet what watching was actually doing. The gap dropped to 4 hours during the third week. He would sit at the table in the cold morning and watch footage from before dawn that same day, and the figure would be in the open yard, performing his movements from 4 hours prior with the same slow fidelity. Never hurried, never imprecise. Each gesture rendered back to him complete and exact, the way a mirror renders your face back to you, but one beat behind and growing closer. The night the gap dropped to 1 hour, Harlan was watching footage from 60 minutes earlier when he saw himself on screen sit down at the kitchen table and sit there looking at the monitor, exactly the way he was sitting right now. The Yesterday Man was at the tree line in the footage, sitting in precisely Harlan's posture, watching something off camera, something that would have been Harlan performing this same action 1 hour before. The circle closed in his mind like a door swinging shut. Every evening he had spent hunched over that monitor. Every careful hour of study, every attempt to understand, he had been providing new material, new movements, new positions, new behaviors for the yesterday man to absorb and mirror back. The watching was not a defense. The watching was the instruction. Every time he had tried to understand it, he had made it more complete, more capable, more present. He shoved back from the table. The chair scraped the plank floor, and the sound was shockingly loud in the stillness. He pressed himself back against the far wall, away from the monitor, and breathed through his nose and tried to think. The wind had stopped. That was the first thing. The pines were perfectly still, and the silence had a weight that the ordinary silence of the ridge never had. The kind of silence that means something has changed. The second thing was the smell. Wet limestone, cold and mineral and deep, rolling in from the direction of the sinkhole. That underground exhalation, much stronger than usual, the way it only came when air pressure shifted sharply, or when something at the sinkhole's mouth disturbed the cold air rising from below. Something moving there, perhaps. Something passing close to the edge of that dark opening in the earth. Harlan's eyes drifted to the monitor on the table. Against everything in him, he looked. The figure was not at the tree line. It was in the yard, standing in the open ground between the pines and the porch. And it was close, closer than it had ever appeared on any tape, any recording, any frozen frame. And it was doing what Harlan had done exactly 60 minutes ago. It was walking toward the cabin. One step, then another. His gait precisely, his rhythm, his weight, the slight drag of the right foot when he was tired, rendered back to him from 40 yards away in green-gray silence, growing closer with each frame. Step, step, pause, step. On the screen, the figure reached the base of the porch steps. Harlan stood 12 feet from the front door. He had not moved. His palms were flat against the plaster of the far wall, and he watched the figure do what he had done 1 hour before. Cross the yard, reach the stairs, and begin to climb. From outside, from the porch. The sound, one slow creak of weight settling onto old wood. Not wind, not an animal. One step measured and ascending, and then a second, and then the particular soft yielding of the loose board near the porch rail that Harlan had walked over every day for years and never once fixed. On the monitor, the figure's hand rose slowly toward where the door handle would be. And from the front of the cabin came a sound Harlan had heard every day of his life there. The soft, metallic sound of a latch giving way. The door swung open, just the way he would open it, just the way he always opened it, slow and easy and unhurried, like a man coming home to a place he knows very well, in no particular hurry, with all the time in the world. The tapes ran for another 11 minutes after that. Nobody ever watched them.